Are we
Very good.
live? We're live. Perfect.
Um, Good evening, Tim O'Connell, Chair of the Utility Board. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:10 p.m. Are there any public appearances?
No public appearances this evening.
Very good. First item of business is approval of the minutes from the February 11 meeting. Those were included in your packet. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Moved by Member Lair. Is it second? I saw Craig raise his hand a second. Any discussion? They look fine to me. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right. Next item of business is the stormwater operations update.
I'm going to go ahead and ask Brian and Decca to take control and provide the update this evening.
Well, good evening. I'm Brian Hartvigsen, the Stormwater and Right-of-Way Manager, and I'm joined by Decca Roble. She's the Stormwater Quality Tech on our team. I'll be going over the Stormwater Utility Operations Maintenance section, and then Decca will review the NPDES permit regulations, what's changed, and where we're going from here. So we'll start with the presentation.
Can you all see it?
Yep,
Yeah.
looks good.
Better, yeah.
We're going to go over the stormwater utility. We're going to go over maintenance and operations. Then we'll go over the NPDES permit and follow up with next steps looking forward. So what is the stormwater utility? It's a system that transports all the surface water through a series of conveyance systems, eventually into Lake Washington, because we are an island in the middle of Lake Washington. It's composed of catch basins and retention ponds, and those help remove the larger debris and sediment from the stormwater. This picture on the screen is what's known as a trash rack or debris rack. That also helps filter out some of the larger debris from the surface water. Beyond that, the stormwater is untreated, so the other finer pollutants like oil, car wash detergents, or dissolved metals will eventually flow into the lake since it's not treated. So we address this problem by doing spot inspections. We do outfall inspections routinely to determine if there's any pollutants or evidence of pollutants in the system. And then we would trace those upstream to a source and hopefully remedy that situation. But we also have quick spill response. So just for the fact that we have roadways and vehicles traveling at all times, there can be oil spills, car accidents, or hydraulic leaks from garbage trucks that occur. When those spills happen, we have a quick response on our team where we have spill kits that we install as quickly as possible to isolate the spill and then address cleanup from there. So what do we have? We have 357 outfalls to Lake Washington on the island. We have 5,565 catch basins. And this is 17 more than the last time we reviewed this. And that's due to some capital projects that added additional catch basins. So this number evolves. We have over 83 miles of piped stormwater conveyance, 13 miles of open ditches, and 9 miles of open water courses. Part of the maintenance and operations is system cleaning. So our storm pipes are routinely jet cleaned to remove roots and other blockages. We use a Vector service to remove sediment from the catch basin sumps. And also we clean out the sediment ponds using this Vector service. Right now it's a contracted service that we use since we don't have an in-house Vector for stormwater. The sediment that we remove during this process is disposed at the city shop. We have our own decant facility. and that separates the liquids and the solids. The solids are put under cover where they get dried out, and eventually they're hauled to a licensed facility for disposal. The liquids go through a drainage system where the solids are settled out even further. And then the liquid is distributed into the sewer system for King County, and King County treats that water from there. We have a discharge permit from King County for this facility. So quarterly, we do decant water testing to look for any contaminants that we're actually distributing into their wastewater system. They like to know what they're getting. Part of the operations also includes inspections. So we use the pipe camera inspections. So we have a track cam in-house that can move up pipes and pivot and allow a picture like what you see on the screen. We also have push cam where it's a little bit smaller and able to go down smaller pipes like 4-inch pipes. The track cam we use for the bigger pipes, such as that one on the screen. So we have targeted inspections in advance of capital roadway overlays. We do this so we know the status of the pipes underneath the roads before we do the overlay, so we can address any concerns prior to that. We add any of the larger defects that we notice to our capital improvements projects moving forward. Some of the smaller items we can address in-house. Like I mentioned, we do tend to have some spills or from car accidents or hydraulic leaks from garbage trucks. That's called an illicit discharge. So when we get alerted from the public or from the incident that's creating that, it could be from the garbage service, they'll reach out to report a spill. Or if our own staff notice that there's a spill, we get into action quickly. These pictures are one of the cleanup efforts that we did recently. We use our spill kits to clean up the spill itself. We try to contain the spill so it doesn't spread into the MS4, the catch basins, or get conveyed downstream into the lake. We use our street sweeper, finally, if necessary, which helps do the final cleanup effort. We had 20 of these incidents in 2024, but that's actually down about 50% from the prior year. So it does vary, and it's nice that there were fewer in 2024. These spills are also reported to Department of Ecology, and we keep track of them in our MPDS permit. And Dick is going to go over that later on.
So, Brian, let me stop you there. When you say illicit, I mean, that kind of suggests intentional. I mean,
well, it's not intentional, but it's just a terminology used in the permit that anything other than rainwater that enters the drainage system is considered an illicit discharge. So that's your detergents, your oil leaks, anything that's a pollutant other than rainwater. And they call that illicit discharge. And that's how it's termed in the permit. So it's not that it's on purpose. Most of these are, I would say, if not all, are accidental in nature. It's usually through a lack of knowledge. If somebody's washing off like paint brushes or something in catch basins, they don't actually know that it doesn't get treated. So we help educate people when that happens. But for the most part, it's accidental mechanical breakdowns.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, you said you had 20 in 2024, that was about half of the number of the prior year. Do you have a sense of what the range is? I mean, is 20 to 40 about the range of them, or is it, I don't know, 10 to 100 or?
It's a pretty fair range. We've been closer to the 30 range, I'd say, on average. So it's almost right in the middle is the average. Okay. This is on a low end. And it really varies from mainly traffic accidents or mechanical breakdown from various contractors.
Thank you.
Yep. So we touched on it, that we do use the street sweeper for these illicit discharge events. We also routinely sweep to pick up debris before it enters catch basins, which helps our water quality downstream. The frequency is based on the intensity of the road use. The town center gets the highest frequency of street sweeping. And then our arterial roadways are number 2. And then the residential streets get cycles at least twice a year. So year to date, we just have some stats up here. We've done 51 miles of arterial roads, 16 miles of residential, and 11 of the town center. And a lot of this quarter included some pretty sub-freezing temperatures, so we had to winterize the sweeper. It's obviously not great to spray water when it's sub-freezing, so we had several weeks of that. So our stats are a little lighter than typical years, but we're back at full strength sweeping now. And the sweeper, I would also like to point out, the sweeper is 10 years old, and we're looking to get a replacement this year. We're looking at some electric options. So one of our big challenges is the aging infrastructure. Our staff address a lot of the minor repairs and replacements. Some of the larger repairs get entered into the capital improvement program. Those are consisting of repiping or slip lining or pipe bursting. We do this using the lens of a 50-year durability, so we don't have to do this frequently. This example here is a picture where it was actually a unknown, possibly private lateral 4-inch pipe that was draining into our main stormwater pipe. But it had a defect, some cracks, and it was causing water to leak out across the roadway. So when we uncovered it, our staff cut the pipe, replaced it with some newer material, connected it to our storm main, and it addressed the leaking water across the roadway in this situation. So this was actually not known. It wasn't on GIS. It was just a smaller diameter pipe. So we're still uncovering repairs, and we don't have a full assessment of all the infrastructure that's out there from prior to when the city became an actual municipality after King County.
So if it's private, does that imply some, I don't know, some obligation on the part of whoever it is to actually be responsible for the cost of maintaining it?
Yes, if it's known that it's private, then it falls on the private party to do the repair. This was categorized as unknown, and it was still within the right-of-way boundary. So we made the repair since it was actually affecting our own public infrastructure. So it's in our best interest to correct the situation in this regard. And then some other common repairs and replacements, we stabilize ditches to correct the erosion, and catch basins are updated to the current standard when we have some of the older catch basins that have defects. Older ones are composed of bricks. This is another good example of a in-house staff repair. They were doing their camera inspections up a pipe near the Roanoke, and they observed when they came to a structure, an endpoint of a structure, they observed some daylight filtering through. So they did some further research and realized that there was ivy and some vegetation covering this open custom juncture of a pipe. This predates the city. This is not up to standards, but it was hidden by some vegetation down a ravine. It's not accessed by any pedestrians, or it was rarely used area. So thanks to the inspection of the push cam, we found this, uncovered it, and then had to get it up to standards. So they, due to the difficult access, they hoisted with a lift all these precast structures and assembled them in a manner that actually stair-stepped this open ditch. So it was functional, yet up to standards. So it made the end of the run from the top one of the structures and then started the new run from the lower structure down. So now we're still able to get access and do further inspections using these up-to-date precast structures. And obviously, it's much better than having an open hole 4 feet deep within the brush.
Yeah.
And we do continue to uncover new infrastructure that is unknown. The utility board, some of the members came out last summer where we did an on-site show and tell, and this is one of the items. This is near Clark Beach. We had a landslide last season due to heavy rain or the overly steepened slope slumped and blocked our arterial roadway. So our in-house staff constructed using the ecology blocks, this 60-foot linear wall. It was about 7 feet high. They stabilized the toe of the slope, added some drainage behind it. And it turned out really nice, stabilized the slope. But this is all due to the fact that the next slide, I think we have some slides. We've had some intense rainfall events as the climate has changed. So it has increased the frequency of some short duration, high intensity rainfall. And those events in particular cause our system to surcharge. It causes more landslides because of the intensity. So far, it's been more so on the north end of the island, which is the convergent zone area. And it causes some surcharging and then the resulting erosion. And the Clark Beach happened on the south end. That was from a combination of the loose soils and trees that we removed after the fact that the trees destabilized the soil and helped cause that landslide. So the vegetation can play a role in destabilizing the slopes and also this high intensity rainfall.
Ryan, I noticed that Will has a question. You want to take that question now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's related to this exact topic. I'm glad you touched on this. I'm just aware through my own work around how what you're talking about now, changing rainfall patterns, is causing some challenges with design decisions that were made on infrastructure in like the city of Seattle and elsewhere. So you're talking about landslides, but do we have any stormwater infrastructure that needs upgrades because of the changes that we're seeing?
Yeah, we're constantly doing assessments, and towards the end of this presentation, we're going to touch on a new item that we started, I think in November, we installed it, and we just recently received some of the data. But we have a portable flow monitoring system that we installed in one of the catch basins. That's part of a system that has surcharge during high intensity, short duration events. So getting that data of the flow rates will help feed some of the improvements and upsizing in the future of the capital program. So also, a significant amount of this work feeds our capital and the maintenance and operations, and it's driven by the Department of Ecology NPDES permit. And for that section, then DECA is going to go over that permit and what it entails. It has several components.
So can we stop there for a second? Are there any other questions about this portion before we move on to the permitting issues? Because I have one, Brian, if no one else does. I appreciate the work that is done on the street sweeping operation and the difference that makes for the quality of what we put in the lake. I am curious, what's the expectation as to some of the non-publicly owned impermeable spaces, the parking lots, things along those lines? What if anything is done to keep rainwater from just going in through the parking lots and out into the
Well,
stormwater system?
we do some source control inspections that are on the private side, but generally we are responsible for the public side. Our city-owned separate stormwater system. So if a private system is tied into or drains into our public stormwater system, then it is our responsibility to ensure that they have clean water running off their facility since it enters our system. But if it's fully contained on the private property, then that's a private issue. Obviously, we would encourage them to monitor their pollution and keep it clean. And the source control helped address some aspects of that, which will be covered under the permit.
So how, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks. I mean, up in the town center, down at the South End shopping area, there's some decent sized parking lots. How are those taken care of?
If it's draining into our system and there's any illicit discharge, then we would go out to the property owner and ask them to clean it up. So we would contain the spill. We would likely clean it up ourselves from the MS4 side. And we could also backbill the property owner for our time and resources. But we would push to the private property owner to ensure that they have clean water running off their surface or entering the pipes.
So if I can interject, just I'll give you an example of something that happens fairly often. It's especially in the summer. It's say a contractor is working on the island, they run to QFC, or I'll just use QFC as an example. It could be any store to pick up lunch or goods for the day. Something spills out of their truck, or they're washing down their paintbrushes in the parking lot into a basin. Someone usually calls that in to the city. Often our residents call that into us. And then Brian's team would go out and assess. And as he's mentioning, in that particular case, it's our requirement and interest to protect our system. And so majority of the time that system does enter ours at some point. So we'll take over and help control it. But if it's contained on that site, then our team will work directly with the property owners. In this case, I'm using QFC as an example. I'm not saying it is QFC, but if that's the location was, our team would work with the property owners to mitigate the issue and clean up the site. But in terms of like ongoing maintenance, that's on the private side. That would be the responsibility of the private property owner.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we have experience with that. Even restaurants, if they try to wash off their floor mats that happen to have grease on them and it flows across the surface and enters the public side where it's our responsibility, then we will reach out to that restaurant. And DECA has had experience with those interactions and educating and having them clean up the source.
On that point, we have, do we have any, and I'm not looking for specific businesses or private property owners, but do we have sort of repeat offenders? And in which case, what recourse does the city have to address the problem?
That falls to code enforcement, so there are escalating measures, and we have had a repeat offender and we addressed it.
Yeah, so at that point, so good question, Vice Chair Quantz. That at that point, it sort of switches from the Public Works umbrella into the CPD umbrella, because that's where code enforcement is. But that's what the city code allows us to pursue, and the tool that we have in our toolbox to address it. So I would say years ago, concrete trucks used to be mixing trucks used to be a problem on the island. It seems to have gotten better over time, but those were often frequent flyers as well.
Okay. Thank you. Why don't we go ahead and move on?
Okay. So moving on to the NPDS. NPDS, it stands for the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. So we have a new permit The 2024-2029 permit went into effect in August of 2024. And typically the permit was 8 sections, but now it has 9 components. And so the newest component is the stormwater management for existing development. And I'll go into more detail later on in the presentation. But for this presentation, we will be focusing on public education and outreach, stormwater management for existing development, and source control program for existing development. And I believe that last component will answer a few of those questions you guys had earlier. So what are the new requirements for the NPDES that just went into effect? As I said earlier, the stormwater management for existing development is the latest component. So what this entails is making sure that we are going to be doing the actions that we identified for the SMAP. So, which is, they love their acronyms, which stands for Stormwater Management Action Plan. And so we identified that Watershed Basin 7 is an area that we can focus on further developing the stormwater system. So that includes watercourse improvement, seeing if there are any culverts or any catch basin or stormwater infrastructure that needs to be updated if it's aging. And so that's what that includes. And so that just holds us accountable for those short and long-term plans that we identified last year. Another new requirement for the NPDES is developing a tree canopy, goals, and policies to support stormwater management. And so we will be mapping the tree canopy, public and private, of the entire island and identifying sites that could use more trees for stormwater management. And what that looks like, the different types of species, and those will all go into hand in hand as we develop that program. Another new development is developing a new behavior change campaign. And as we stated in this map, we are focusing on Watershed Basin 7. And so our behavior change campaign will be focused in that region. And we are going to be doing the dumpster lid campaign so that commercial area in south of Mercer Island, where the QFC and the Starbucks is located, we will be focusing on making sure those dumpster lids are closed and stormwater doesn't enter or even get released from those dumpsters. Another new component is establishing a municipal street sweeping program to focus on priority areas. City of Mercer Island has been pretty great. They already have a sweeper system and a street sweeping program. But this is more of like other cities that don't have it or other municipalities, but we are going to further establish what that looks like for us and focusing on the areas of that we identified in this map. We have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. How do tree canopies impact stormwater? I mean, what's the I don't, is there one or two sentence answer to that? I mean, is more tree canopy mean that you have, I don't know, does it filter the water somehow, or you have less water that comes down, or?
Yeah, so it will be focusing on infiltrating that stormwater. So instead of having that water run off as surface water and into the catch basin and out into the lake, rather having more trees will promote that water to be infiltrated into the ground and support those trees. And so it's a way of using like low impact development to treat stormwater, because stormwater is basically untreated here on the island.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the public education outreach component. So last year, so the public, so for the permit, we always need to make sure that we're educating the general public. So that means either holding booths or educating folks at recycling events. But last year I focused on a watershed presentation model for the local high school, Mercer Island High School. And so here I am presenting to the Earth Club and any other students that wanted to join who weren't members as well. And so I showcased the model and showed how there are various point sources of pollution, and so how those all impact local water bodies. And so just the different sources of pollution, just educating the folks on that. And last year, for the first time, I presented at the Covenant Shores Senior Living, and that was a lot of fun. Those folks were really engaged and really wanted to learn how to do their part. And so that was really great, just presenting to just a different type of general public. And so I definitely want to do more of that. And then every year at Summer Celebration, we host a stormwater booth, just educating the public on the stormwater infrastructure, what they can do in terms of their private property. So it's always just a great opportunity for the public to speak with us and for us to be able to educate them and inform them of what they can do to reduce any stormwater pollution. So the new component of the NPDES permit is the SMED, just as I covered earlier. And so what this is focusing on is utilizing the Stormwater Management Action Plan that we identified Watershed Basin 7 is our area of focus. And so this means updating stormwater infrastructure, repairing any infrastructure that needs it, so culverts, pipes, or catch basins. And as I mentioned earlier, watershed watercourse stabilization projects, and that behavior change campaign that is focused at that commercial area in South End. And also just as we develop the street sweeping program, making sure there's a program or part of it that's focusing on improving stormwater quality in that watershed basin. So the source control program is a new program. Last year was the first year that we implemented it. And so we are required to inspect at least 12 businesses in on Mercer Island. And most of the time so it's just a list that's already been created of over 50 businesses. And so I've been identifying areas that are high pollutant sources. So this year I identified a couple gas stations and the auto spa as well for inspecting. And so I did those inspections. Out of those 12, 2 required re-inspections, and that was of course the gas station. There are several areas of improvement. They did not have a spill kit. Their area, like the covered area, was not cleaned. I could see oil and that could easily get into the catch basin. So I required that they factor out their catch basins and also get a contractor or a sweeper truck to do a cleaning of the parking lot and fueling area. And then I also required that they cover any areas. So for example, they had a lot of tires just stacked up, and so that they needed to store that somewhere that was covered. And so just more of like working with the business, and they're really receptive. They showed me the receipts of like the contractors that they hired, the spill kits, and I made sure that, you know, every person there like knew how to use those spill kits, because it's one thing to acquire it, but like, do you know how to use it when it comes to it? And as well as the auto spa, I required that they remove some empty chemical containers that they just had outside. And so like when it rains, that can just enter into our storm system. And also they did not have a spill kit, nor train their staff. And so I worked with them to get that. And so with the source control inspections, it's more of an educational. That's the way I approach it, just because it's a new program and we are trying to encourage businesses to adopt these practices. And it's a lot easier to have them adopt when it's coming from a place of like an educational component. And we haven't had any businesses where they're like not receptive. And if they were not receptive, we have a progressive enforcement program in place. And, you know, that's just kind of in the back burner, but I'm there to help businesses reach their goals and just be better stewards of the environment. So what are our next steps? Next step is implementing the 2024-2029 NPDES, and that means meeting the deadlines that they have identified. And so, for example, the behavior change campaign, we need to have that implemented by July 1st of this year. As well as the street sweeping program in 2027. So just making sure we're meeting those deadlines. And the way we do that is just by answering, like we have an annual report due every year. And so we are held accountable every year to make sure we are meeting those deadlines as they approach. As I said earlier, we are going to enact the behavior change campaign program. And then we are going to be evaluating technology and equipment options to enhance inspections and repairs of the storm system. And then we are going to continue staff training of pipeline condition rating software. And as Brian mentioned earlier, utilizing that flow meter for catch basins and determining flows and sites that need further rehabilitation. And so that's all for us. Do you guys have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Redeemer. I think this has been very comprehensive. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Just a comment.
Will, yes, go ahead.
Just a comment, not a question, but I just remember on my first facilities tour, just seeing some of the work that you all do and being aware of how much of a shoestring staff you have. And it's very impressive. So thanks for all you do and for this presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time with us this evening. If there nothing else in this, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, the water supply line update.
Give me just 1 second. And can you see my screen?
Not yet. There we go. Yes,
Awesome.
we have you now.
All right, utility board members, this is the presentation that was given to the council last month in February. I'm just gonna go through it real quick. If you want the full discussion, the background information, agenda bills, we can certainly provide that, but I just want to get the utility board up to speed and then talk about sort of what's happening since the last February meeting. And as we look forward to I believe the May meeting we'll bring forth the Seattle Public Utilities contract amendment and start talking through the framework of what that amendment looks like, both in terms of the read opener language that was in the works the last year or two, in addition to the modifications to the water supply line. So with that, let's go through this real quickly. Just for a reminder to everybody, and Alan, plug your ears because the ops manager hates it when I say this, but it's the truth. The last 2 Aprils, both in 23 and 24, we've had major water emergencies that have caused quite a big hiccup to city operations. And so we're coming up on that anniversary date. We are fingers crossed, knocking on wood, that nothing happens this year. But I'll remind the board that both in 2023, they had a major valve failure on the Seattle Public Utility side of the house. And then obviously last year we had the leak that we were dealing with and trying to mitigate. Following that 2023 event, as we talked about during the capital discussion and the rate discussion last year, we have the ongoing risk and resiliency reliability work that's taking place in the background that followed that 2023 emergency. It got a little bit sidetracked last year given the other emergency that took place. But we do have a draft action plan from Confluence that they've been working through. We're currently exploring or pursuing the expansion of the existing well capacity. And then those additional alternatives for consideration will be presented to the city council and be included in the water system plan, which is scheduled to be updated in this budget biennium as well, with the idea that they'll be folded into future capital improvement programs. Oops, going the wrong way. Sorry. Just a quick refresher here on the map is the overview of how the city receives water. Again, we're 100% reliant upon Seattle Public Utilities. The water comes across the bridge, emerges into our system at the East Mercer boat ramp. The blue line is the city of Mercer owned line. So that 16-inch line that runs down East Mercer Way is how actually water was delivered to the community during the last emergency last year. Under normal operations, it follows the purple line, that 24-inch line, over to 92nd, down 92nd and Southeast 43rd and into the reservoir tanks. That section, that 24-inch section along Southeast 40th is obviously the pipe that was where the leak was and it had been slip lined. And that's the section of pipe that we're looking to replace and build a new supply line. The yellow line here on the map shows the proposed alignment. So basically coming still same merge point at the East Mercer Channel Bridge, underneath the East Mercer Channel Bridge at the boat launch. But then it runs around Southeast 36th and up Gallagher to Southeast 40th. And then the purple section on 92nd and Southeast 43rd. We'll talk about that segment in just 1 second. So here's a closer look, and again, from a capital side on the city perspective, we tried to align our projects that were in the queue for this area, so that the water work is finished first, rather than sidewalks, roadways, and transportation improvements done first, and then water comes through and rips it up. We like to do the water work first and then put nice new streets and sidewalks in after the fact. In addition, we've talked a handful of times about our AC main replacement projects. There was an 8-inch AC main that was scheduled for replacement actually this year that runs down Gallagher that we delayed that project once we started moving forward with the water supply line. And now those two projects will be combined under one. So under one big construction project, we're looking to do the new supply line, the AC main replacement, the transportation ADA improvements, and then some other minor water work associated with the water lines. As part of the work, obviously, the Shorewood conversation comes into play. Just a reminder to the utility board, currently Shorewood is a direct customer of Seattle Public Utilities. They are not a customer of Mercer Island. How under the new alignment, we would propose a new connection point to the city, and they would become a customer of the city once this project is completed. So as I mentioned, there is one segment. So with the new pipe alignment, when it comes up Gallagher and to Southeast 40th, that section along 93rd Ave, and then along Southeast 43rd, that is per the SPU contract that the city has. That is a section that is still a section of pipe that is owned and operated by Seattle Public Utilities, but the financial responsibility is 100% the city. Those are existing assets for Seattle Public Utilities. So one of the questions that we teed up to the council was, should we pursue ownership of the transfer of ownership of those utilities or those assets to the city of Mercer Island Utilities, rather than going from a Seattle Public Utility system into a city system and back into an SPU system, back to a city system. So by transferring ownership of this segment of pipe or this section, it would, once water comes onto the island, everything would be city-owned, operated, controlled moving forward. So again, we propose some alternatives for the council consideration. The short apartments, there is a do nothing option. So technically, even with the construction of a new water supply line, Shorewood could still be directly connected to Seattle Public Utilities via the existing SPU supply line that they slip lined last year. However, with that, it doesn't eliminate the risk and other elements associated with that existing SPU pipeline. And so staff's recommendation to the council was actually to transfer the Shorewood ownership into the city system, and have them be a customer of the city under a new configuration with the new supply line. Again, just a reminder, we are pursuing an alternative service delivery for this project. Our usual construction projects are a design bid build package where the city is obligated to take the lowest responsive bidder on a public works project. We are going with a heavy civil GCCM project where we've actually hired our design team, and we are in the final stages of getting proposals and vetting the contractors for this project as well. The idea is the contractor is brought into the project early on, prior to 30% design, to help with design decisions, cost decisions, construction decisions early in the design process, to help alleviate the challenges associated with construction, accelerate the schedule, and then provide additional flexibility and collaboration on the project. I see a couple of questions. Do you want me to come back and take questions?
Yeah, no, let's take those before we move on from this slide to the next one. Meredith,
Sure.
I think you were first. At least
Yeah,
have a question.
I put it up and then I didn't put it down because I wasn't sure we were going to stop now. In terms of the transfer of the line from SPU to us, Jason, is there any incentive for the city of Seattle to not want to transfer it to us? I mean, we pay for it. Or is that going to be an issue?
So since we've done this presentation, I've had a discussion with SPU. The short answer is no. both the main supply line, the section of supply line that we're replacing, the city is financially responsible just under 98% of that cost. The 2% that remains is the Seattle Public Utilities costs via the Shorewood connection. So the city is the main financial contributor for that section of pipe, and then the remaining section is all city owned. So even if it was still maintained and owned and operated by Seattle Public Utilities for the final section or final segment, they would be approaching the city for design decisions, replacement decisions, things like that, because we are the financial bearer of that project. By transferring those assets into the city's purview, it allows us to be in more control over the projects, the cost, the timing for the costs, the timing of construction, what type of contingency in play, and then, to be perfectly honest, it's going to lower the overhead costs for the replacements because our overhead is significantly less than Seattle Public Utilities for these types of projects.
Right, so we don't expect SPU to oppose this for any reason.
No.
Thanks.
I had a question about the Shorewood issue, and recognizing the reliability that we've had on the reservoir during each of these water emergencies. How does adding Shorewood to our system impact our reservoir?
Great question.
Yeah, or did they already draw from it during those times?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is yes. They already drew from it during those emergencies. So during those emergencies, we actually provided an emergency intertie, and provided water to Shorewood during those emergencies. It happens a handful of times throughout the course of the years, depending on what's happening on both, usually on the Shorewood system. I will say the other piece to it is we've brought in our water modeler to obviously look at the numbers and evaluate the numbers to make sure that we can actually absorb Shorewood within our system without any hiccup. And the water model is showing that we can in fact do that. And like I said, we have brought them onto the system during the last two emergencies as well. That said, additional water storage is one of the ideas and discussions and concepts being talked about for resiliency and reliability elements. And that's system-wide, not just specific to Shorewood. So where that falls in terms of adding that to the capital list is still TBD, but that is something that has been discussed and mentioned as part of that reliability and action plan.
Any other questions at this point before we move on? All right, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah. So as I talked to the council, our next steps is to get in front of the council, likely on a quarterly basis. So we presented in February. We'll probably come back to them. My guess is probably early summer with an update. The most recent news that's taking place is, like I said, we are officially under contract with RH2 as our design and engineering team for this project. We are in the final stages of getting a contractor on board. We've had good interest from contractors, received numerous proposals for this project, and a lot of good question and dialogue taking place in the backdrop. And I anticipate that we'll have a contractor on board within the month for this project. I teed up the council questions below, and I'll fill you in on where the council landed. Again, this was seeking council direction on where to start our conversations with SPU regarding the transfer of ownership and the new supply line. So the first question was, should the city pursue a permanent connection with Shorewood? The answer was yes. They would like us to start there. Should that remaining 24-inch line, the SPU line, remain in service? The answer was no. They'd like to see that being abandoned once the new supply line is in place. And then the transfer of ownership for the remaining segment of the SPU pipe. They did agree with the staff recommendation to pursue the transfer of ownership of that pipeline. So again, the idea would be that once that water comes onto the island at the East Channel Bridge, everything from that point forward would be through city-owned and operated pipelines. So with that, that's the end of the discussion. I'll pause there for questions.
So I don't see anybody else's hand raised, so I'll jump in. Jason, I'm just curious. what is the status of the Shorewood infrastructure within the complex? I mean, is that, I mean, is the water system there been well
I don't know.
maintained? Is it up to the same standards as the rest of the city?
That's a great question. I don't know the specific answer to that question because it's private. It's all private utility, private responsibility. That is something that that's our request for information. Any information the SPU can provide to it, we will find out. That is obviously a big interest to the city. However, I will say where the city is proposing that Shorewood connects to our system, everything from that point back to the Shorewood system would be 100% Shorewood's responsibility. So the infrastructure that we would take, we would know obviously the current condition. We feel pretty confident in it. It actually eliminates a section of AC pipe, which is part of our, part of our roadmap, our programmatic efforts on the capital side. I don't want to speculate on the Shorewood system, on the private system. I can tell you through my conversations with the fire marshal and things like that, in terms of development activity, I can say it's probably an antiquated system, but again, I don't want to speculate in terms of the current condition. I just heard rumors. I don't know it firsthand, so I'll refrain from going too far, but just understanding that it will still be Shorewood's responsibility on the private side.
All right. Thank you. Meredith.
Yeah, so Jason, just quickly, and I'm not asking for specifics, will the Shorewood residents be paying roughly the same as what they were paying to SPU to Mercer Island, or is there a big difference one way or the other?
That is a question that we were going to work through with SPU. I don't know what the current rate is that Shorewood's paying to SPU. I don't know what that'll be part of the analysis that will take place in terms of our contract amendment, obviously meeting with the Shorewood property owners and management team as well as SPU, but that is something that is on our list of things to work through.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Any other questions? No, I think everybody's on board.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you,
If
Jason.
you want the full-blown version, it's all recorded on the YouTube video on the city council webpage. So have at it. Or if you have questions,
Well,
don't
we've
hesitate to
talked
reach out
about
to me.
this a number of times, so I think the board is pretty up to speed on
Yeah.
this issue. It has been a long-term kind of project, so we very much appreciate you keeping us informed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, any other business? If not, we could talk about the work plan. We got a month off coming up here.
Correct. So we do have a month off in April, and then we'll pick it up in May. The timing for the May discussion is the SPU wholesale contract amendment. So, like I said, we've had the first
be
conversation with SPU to kick off this conversation, as well as we are nearing the final stages of what I'll consider the final draft of the contract amendment that's being proposed for the contract reopener with SPU. So I'm hoping that by that May meeting, I'll have that draft contract that I can bring to the board to talk through the changes in it, what to expect with it, impacts to the city, and then talk about any conversations that we've had regarding the water supply line. And right now we're still haven't officially landed yet, but given the timing of our supply line project, I think we will probably end up doing a contract amendment. Perhaps ideally we would just do one contract amendment and cover both the reopener language as well as the transfer of ownership of assets, but it's possible we might have to make two amendments depending on timing of things. So I'll provide an update with that at the May meeting. In June, we have board elections, and I will just put this plug out there now. We do have some existing board members that have termed out that will not be with us in the next couple of months. And then we have one resignation. So we actually have 4 open seats for the utility board. So if we have 4 open seats and we don't have the positions filled by June, we won't have a quorum. So I'm working with the city clerk to work through that and make sure that the recruitment goes out and we get the positions filled before then. But ideally in June, we do the board elections. And then you see on the work plan that we have the PSE franchise agreement update on the schedule. So following the November bomb cyclone event, the city council asked that we put the franchise agreement back on the table in the work plan to accomplish this next 2 years through this budget biennium. And so work is taking place in the background to work with PSE on getting that franchise agreement updated, because it's 13 years, I believe, past due. So we can provide an update on that. July will be our typical field trip and utility site tours. We'll have some new board members, so it'll be good for them to get out and see the infrastructure. August will be our typical summer recess. And then as we get into the fall, we'll dive into rate discussions and then updates on the water supply line and the contract amendment.
In our last meeting, Jason, I recall some discussion about whether we would try to have the May meeting in person. Is that still on track?
Yep, that'll be on track. I will make sure the room is booked, but we will plan on doing it at the Slater room at the Mercer Island Community Event Center, and we'll host it in person. First time we'd be in person since before COVID.
Very good. Very good.
It'll also be a hybrid format too. So if people can't be in person, we can accommodate. But
Well, it'd be good to have at least one more in-person meeting before my term ends. What is the
Cheryl
city
O'Connell.
doing to publicize these vacancies? Because I'm not sure I've seen anything.
It's coming. It's coming soon.
All right.
It's coming soon. And there have been some people that have expressed interest, and I'm making sure
Good.
that they are aware of the opening. And Cheryl O'Connell, if we need some people to continue to volunteer, we might reach out to you again.
Well, I've been doing this for 12 years, so I'd feel bad if it all just crumbled when I left. So, but you make some efforts.
Duly noted.
You just
All
didn't
right.
realize how crucial you were, huh, Tim?
I am under no illusions, Meredith, none at all. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Hearing not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn in time to see the start of the ZAG game.
So moved.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, everybody, have a great spring break, and see you in May.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.